Okay, right. Good evening, friends. Today we are going to talk about the icon. Mr. Mario is going to deliver his seventh part of the talk about Steve Jobs. The time is already late. It is 7:46. I don't want to take much time. I'm just simply handing over the session to Mario. Let Mario continue.
Okay, thank you, Uncle. Good evening, all. So this week we're going to talk about chapter 6, which is called Show Business. So this chapter basically talks about how uh, Steve Jobs and how Steve Jobs got into Pixar and how the Pixar business picked up. So this chapter shows us how Steve Jobs, who was already a global poster boy for the computer business, how he managed to become a major Hollywood player. Okay, and it details from the early stages of Pixar to the end where they were able to get the result. So Steve had an ideal combination of experience and also a history of leading and infuriating people, or small groups of people, to work against the odds of delivering something extraordinary. And in the last few chapters, we saw that with his personal charisma, ability to discover and challenge exceptional people to reach beyond their comfort zone, he was very good in getting people to achieve extraordinary feats of innovation. So, but what happened was the seeds of Jobs' eventual triumph were planted almost by accident. So there are four main characters in this chapter, and I'm going to talk about each of them as we go along. So there was a person called Alvy Ray Smith. He was a PhD from Stanford University, and he was inspired with art. He was interested in art, and he had a very different view of the world. So he visited Xerox PARC. Xerox PARC is a famous place where Steve Jobs and his friends went and got the idea of creating, a computer in a very different way. So Alvy Ray Smith also visited them, and he was inspired with the technology. He wanted to work for Xerox, but there was no opportunity. So the team there was inspired by his intelligence and designed a plan to have him join their team. But eventually, the bureaucracy of Xerox found out, and he was out. So then he worked as a professor, and he did not like it as much because he was interested in art and he was interested in computer graphics as well. So he went uh, in the search of a person called Ed Catmull, who was another PhD who was working for Alexander Schur. So Ed Catmull is the other person. Alexander Schur was an eccentric millionaire. He had purchased several $1 million worth of Dex wax machines, which at that time was considered as one of the fastest computer machines and was suitable for graphics programming. So Dr. Schur, who Ed Catmull was working for, was the one who started the New York Institute of Technology. And now in New York Institute of Technology is such a big institution, and they have close to 250 alumni, and it's a very great place to study technology now. But at that stage, it was Dr. Schur who started the NYIT. So Alvy joined the team along with Ed Catmull, and they became very good friends over time. So the world of animation at that particular moment was transitioning from 2D to 3D, but they were not able to yet get into the full picture of 3D. The reason was 3D required light bouncing at different objects on different frames, and the right amount of light bouncing at different objects at different frames. And this was a major challenge because at that time it was only mostly 2D. 3D had not even come into the picture as well. And around the same time, the other character, the third character, is George Lucas. George Lucas created the laser sword fight in Star Wars. I think if we maybe Uncle or others who had watched Star Wars movie in the late 70s and 80s can remember the laser sword fight. And George Lucas was the person behind it. He created it without the use of a computer, and what they had to do was take the negative and rerun it and again, adding frames to it, adding different frames to it. We eventually get one frame with the complete sword fight. But it took a lot of time because computers at that time had not yet developed the ability of creating animation graphics. So, as Steve Jobs later pointed out, if you go buy a laser disc of any one of the Star Wars films, and stop it on one of the frames, they were incredibly very noisy and bad quality. So George Lucas, he was considered as a perfectionist. He said, "I like to do it perfectly," and he wanted to do it digitally. And no one had ever done that before to have the movie sent out as a digital copy. So um, they were searching for solutions of how they could improve animation at the time, and uh, they were thinking of why not find a way with computers. So Alvy Ray Smith and Ed Catmull were slowly working to the reality of their situation. Alex Sure knew how to assemble equipment, get the technical talent and animators, but they did not have a person who could create a story, characters, and connect with an audience. They had the technical abilities, but they did not have their they did not they were not very good at storytelling. So their dreams of making great animated movies still seemed a distant reality. By 1980, the key members of the Long Island team, which is Alvy Ray Smith and Ed Catmull, had assembled at Lucasfilm across the Golden Gate Bridge from San Francisco. So this time they met George Lucas, and he turned out to be a ideal godfather for Alvy and Ed Catmull. So at this time, what happened was Lucas got an assignment from Paramount Pictures to do a scene of a epic space scene for Star Trek. And this time, Alvy knew that he was very excited because this was a major Hollywood product that they're going to work on, and they started working on it. So when the scene was finally finished, Alvy couldn't have been more pleased because George Lucas, who did not really consider computer graphics at that time, he said it was a great camera move, and he just made a small gesture. So a small praise, but that didn't matter. George Lucas began calling on Alvy Ray and Ed to spark scenes in different movies with their computer graphics wizardry. So then John Lasseter, who was a fourth character, he came into their life. John was a very young, brilliant storyteller who had created films while in college as well, and he was nominated under the youth category, similar to Oscars. So he was one of the rising stars at the talents at Disney, and soon got John. They hired John along with the team of Alvy and Ed. So it was a monumental decision because later Steve Jobs regarded John Lasseter as one of the brilliant people behind the success of Pixar. So more than that, putting John together with the computer graphic animation changed the entire course of how the motion picture industry functions. So in mid 1983, George and his wife Marcia, George Lucas, announced that they were filing for divorce. And because California is a joint custody state, which meant that if there was a divorce, whatever money was earned during the marriage, whatever assets were earned during the marriage, will be a 50-50 split. So George Lucas, although he didn't have a lot of money, but he had a lot of family assets which were the company's he built. One was Lucasfilm, the other one was Industry Light and Magic, and the third one was Ed and Alvy's Computer Graphics Group. And he also had the advanced post-production facilities of Skywalker Ranch. In 1985, Steve Jobs had a extra $150 million from the termination deal with Apple, because at that time he left Apple, and uh, he gathered a small group of people who were working at Next. A former Xerox wonder kid by the name of Alan Kay, he told Steve to go visit these people, this group of people in California who were working on computer graphics. Steve was interested, and uh, he went along to see that, because this time, because what happened was George Lucas had to cut 50% of his entire assets to his wife, and he was looking to sell uh, some of the company. And since he was not fully into the mindset of computer graphics at the time, he was Ed and Alvy's computer graphics group were the first one of the first priorities for him to sell. So Steve Jobs was stunned by the day when he saw what the group of people were doing, and they were able to create incredibly vivid digital pictures and film clips like he had seen, like nothing he had seen ever before. It was similar to a Xerox PARC moment. So Steve was asking for it, but George wanted $30 million. $30 million. Steve did not, immediately agree to that deal. Later, Alvy and Ed approached Disney, but Disney only offered $15 million. Ross Perot, who was at that time a great venture capitalist, he was close to completing the deal for $30 million because he saw the opportunity. But on the day that he was about to close the deal, he was removed from the board of General Motors. And what happened was the deal fell through, and they did not sign the deal. So Steve Jobs grabbed the opportunity, and since he was already a very tough negotiator, he convinced George Lucas to sell the company, to sell the group that Ed and Alvy created for $10 million. So he got the entire Pixar company at its initial stages for $10 million. He owned 92% stake in it, and 4% each to Ed and Alvy. So still eager to sell uh, hardware, Jobs focused Pixar on building dedicated computers, uh, graphic computers, but it was way too expensive. It was more than $1 lakh in the 80s. And what happened was eventually that didn't sell because of the high price. So John Lasseter, at the same time was creating a short film called Luxor Junior, which got an Academy Award nomination and displayed the potential of CGI animation, CGI computer graphics interface. It was the initial stages of CGI. So Jobs started putting in close to 50. Over time he put in $50 to $60 million of his personal fortune into Pixar, but it lost money. They were not able to make money because they were creating the software and future films, but they didn't have a product or service that they could sell at that time. So, in the midst of this cash crunch, the Pixar team asked them to fund another short film called Toy. It was by John. Jobs accepted the deal, and that film uh, won the animated short film Oscar, and later proved to be the prototype for the most famous story, which is Toy Story, which is Pixar's first feature film. So Pixar finally began to build cash flow by selling RenderMan. RenderMan was a software package uh, that created computer graphics, but the cash drain remained to be so severe that Jobs considered closing Pixar and Next. See, what at that time he did was, as usual, he laid off a third of Pixar's staff, only keeping the animation division. So Steve's personal financial advisor had given Steve messages that he didn't want to hear. He said that the company next had burned through a lot of money and they did not have enough money left. So, and the cost of developing and marketing a computer that everyone admired, only but few wanted to pay for it. So that was a time where Next was almost out. And over the next few months at Pixar, the company continued to shrink to half of its previous size. Steve had been pressing Ed and Albie to close down the animation group, but each time they convinced him of what it could, what the potential future holds. So now, even though the axe was falling on all sides, even though on all sides Steve wanted to close it, uh, John what John created, the film, uh, and the Oscar made all the difference. Where Steve still thought, okay, there's something that he could do, uh, something that he could do with the Pixar division. So eventually, the Oscar which they got for Tin Toy showed that there's a big potential at Pixar, and Steve still considered it to be part of his priority. So at last, to the chapter, Steve, what we identify is Steve showed himself to be talented at picking brilliant technologists, but gaining the brilliant creative force that was John Lasseter. When Steve acquired Pixar wasn't talent, it was sheer luck. John was hired before Steve came along, and John was behind the genius of the success of Pixar. So John was the latest in Steve's things of superstars that he created over his lifetime. So this chapter shows us how the company Pixar started and how eventually Steve got the company for a very very substantial amount considered to the offer, and how, although he had difficulties, he still believed that the Pixar company could do something in the future. So there are a few key points that I want to highlight and I want to share with you this evening. One is, uh, in terms of business, in terms of starting a company, hiring the right people can take you a long way in your business, and it will help you succeed. So it's very important that you get the right people, similar to your mindset, similar to the way you're looking out for a person or what we are looking out for. So as companies grow bigger and bigger, they don't really look at hiring the right people. So when it's a small company, uh, hiring the right people will take you a long way to go. Second thing is fear. So fear is a very big reason of why we don't do anything in our life. Uh, Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of you know, fear of competitors. So the main reason, one of the main reasons I see is whenever someone wants to start a business, and let's say they have big competitors, they think, how am I going to compete with these big players? But here are lessons from Steve Jobs' life. Pixar was nothing when compared to Disney. Okay, but Pixar later turned out to be, you know, on the front line of animation, and they created amazing animation movies over a long period of time, and which we all enjoyed in our, early days and early lives as well. So don't have fears. It's good to have fear, but you should look at it as an opportunity where you could, learn and do better. Third thing is uh, negotiation skills. Negotiation is one of the most important uh, skills that you have to learn in succeeding in business or even personal life. I would say negotiation uh, will help you in closing a deal which could change your life. So developing your negotiation skills is very important, and that's the third point. The last one I want to highlight is we should always be on the constant lookout for opportunities that will help us find one where we have a true desire. So there are a lot of people, I would say, majority of people don't even look out for opportunities that could change their life, that could give them some meaning, or that could, get them out of their uh, hateful job that they're still working on. So you should always look out for opportunities, and opportunities could be everywhere. It could be in an ad while watching YouTube. It could be on an email that is sent to you. But what we do is we just ignore things that we see, or we think that it may not be the right thing for us. So look out for opportunities, try them, and see if you like it. If you like it, nothing can stop you from working on it. You will constantly be thinking about it, even when you're not working. So look out for opportunities and go hard when you find the one that you truly like. Thank you, Uncle. Thank you, everyone, for joining in today.
Thank you, Mario. Thank you. So wonderful conclusions. Really, fear is a major one, spoiling a lot of
Topic.
people coming out from fear. There are a lot of people having unnecessary fear. See, there are a lot of unwanted fear also they are having. Nothing. There will not be any reason, but they have fear. So such a fear, it's not necessary when we enter into the business, marketing, and everything. Opportunity, there are a lot of plenty of opportunity when we focus on that. We'll get it. So wonderful talk. Really happy. Thanks for
Thank
your
you, Uncle.
time spending and coming from office and delivering this. Really, I appreciate your enthusiasm.
Thank
Uh,
you, Uncle. It's the least I could do.
always we welcome your speech. Okay, good. So we will conclude with this session.
Sure,
Uh,
sure, Uncle.
Thank you. We will see you in the next session. Uh, so next session, it's going to be a part 8. This is part 7.
Yes,
Next
Uncle.
next session will be part 8. Okay, let us go see the one part 8. Okay, thanks a lot. Bye bye. I'll end the live. Okay.